What if I told you humanity collectively looked at a plant that makes your heart race, destroys your sleep schedule, increases anxiety, and occasionally gives people the ability to hear colors, and decided, yeah, we should build society around this? I'm talking about coffee, the drink so powerful that millions of people physically cannot function without it. Coffee is one of the most traded products on Earth. Around 170 million, 132 pound bags, or kilograms from my freedomless friends, are produced every year. That is enough to make roughly 567 billion cups of overpriced bean water, which sounds absurd until you remember people will willingly wait in line for 20 minutes because somebody added pumpkin flavoring and emotional support to a latte. Today, coffee is everywhere. Coffee shops obviously, but also energy drinks, ice cream, candles, meat rubs, and shampoos. Humanity discovered caffeine and immediately said, what if everything was coffee flavored? Coffee's history is way stranger than most people realize. It changed how humans worked, socialized, traded, and functioned. And depending on who you ask, modern society may literally run on coffee. Now, coffee most likely originated in Ethiopia. According to legend, a goat herder noticed his goat becoming unusually energetic after eating berries from a certain plant, which means coffee may have been discovered because goats started tweaking out. The story says local monks eventually churned the berries into a drink to help them stay awake during long hours of prayer, because even in ancient times, people were struggling to stay conscious during meetings. From there, coffee spread into the Ottoman Empire in the Middle East. And this is where things really take off, because coffee houses started appearing everywhere. These weren't just places to drink coffee, they became centers of conversation, politics, business, and debate. People gathered to exchange ideas, discuss news, argue philosophy, and probably complain about taxes. So basically ancient Reddit or Twitter, but somehow less toxic. But the bar is really not high to begin with, and eventually coffee spread into Europe. At first, some Europeans were suspicious of it. There were even religious debates over whether coffee was acceptable because it came from the Islamic world. But eventually, coffee exploded in popularity. And one reason was surprisingly practical. Before coffee became widespread, many people drank alcohol constantly. Not necessarily because they were partying, but because water in cities was often unsafe. Fresh water was not always easy to access, especially in crowded urban areas, so weak beer and alcohol were often safer to drink than questionable water supply. So humanity basically was operating slightly drunk for a large portion of history. And then coffee arrived. Suddenly, people had a drink that increased alertness instead of lowering it, which was perfect timing because Europe was industrializing. Factories expanded, business grew, work hours increased, caffeine became incredibly useful. Coffee fit perfectly into the emerging culture for productivity. Human civilization essentially switched from drunk all day to violently awake. And I'm not sure which one is healthier. One gave us drunken bar fights and football hooligans. The other gave us college students surviving on 4 hours of sleep and pure anxiety. As coffee demand grew, so did the industry around it. European powers established coffee plantations throughout the colonies in places like Brazil, the Caribbean, and parts of Asia and Africa. Coffee became massively valuable, and coffee production reached industrial scale. Millions upon millions of beans being harvested, processed, shipped, roasted, and ground and brewed every year. Also, people can say, don't talk to me until I had my coffee. And scientifically speaking, coffee is kind of terrifying. The main active ingredient in coffee is caffeine. Caffeine blocks a chemical in your body, adenosine. I need to get better at looking up the chemical names. Normally, it builds up throughout the day and makes you feel tired. Caffeine basically shows up and tells your brain no, which sounds helpful until the caffeine wears off and the body suddenly remembers you slept 4 hours in 2 days. Caffeine also affects dopamine, contributes to habit formation and pleasure. And over time, people build tolerance, which means many coffee drinkers slowly escalate their intake like medieval alchemists searching for enlightenment. 1 cup becomes 2, 2 becomes 4. Eventually, someone is ordering a drink with 6 espresso shots while visibly vibrating hard enough to phase through drywall. Coffee addiction is also deeply cultural. People aren't just addicted to caffeine, they're addicted to routine. Morning coffee, coffee breaks, coffee dates, coffee shops became social spaces, workplaces, study areas, especially after companies like Starbucks helped transform coffee into a lifestyle product. Coffee stopped being just a drink and became an aesthetic. At some point, humanity looked at caffeine dependency and said, what if this had jazz music and exposed brick wall? Now, I got bored and started researching just how much coffee Americans drink. Around 66% of Americans drink coffee daily, with some sources saying the average coffee drinker has around 3 cups a day. About 28% of coffee shop customers go daily. Some people spend $5 to $10 at every visit, with others spending over $60 a week at Starbucks alone. If you watched my cinnamon video, you already know how powerful seasonal spice marketing is. Starbucks alone sees a roughly 30 to 35% spike in sales when pumpkin spice season starts. Humanity sees cinnamon and immediately loses financial restraint. Today, the global coffee industry is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. There are millions of coffee farmers worldwide, tens of thousands of coffee shops, entire economies connected through global coffee trade, all because humanity discovered a bean that temporarily overrides exhaustion. which tells you a lot about modern civilization. So next time you drink coffee, remember that you're participating in centuries of science, trade, chemistry, addiction, productivity culture, and goat-related discovery. And that is the history of coffee, a drink so powerful humanity built modern work culture around it. Now, if you excuse me, I'm gonna get a drink of water. Because despite making this entire video, I actually hate coffee. And that is somehow not the most hypocritical thing I've ever done. Thank you, and as usual, like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments what food, ingredients, or drinks you want to see next.